I'm a clueless 23-year-old, but I'm focused on one thing, and that one thing is just getting better. Cut. We're not going to cut. We're going to keep rolling. But that is it. I'm clueless as far as the fact that I'm 23. So I've only been alive for 23 years and can only really remember the last 10 of those 23. So like to think that you have it all figured out at this age, even at any age, to be honest, is crazy, you know? And I think I can be quite naive sometimes and presume that I have the answers to the questions that I'm asking, or I have the answers to problems in general. And I think that is entirely naive. It's like I have such a small amount of knowledge in a specific realm that makes me feel like I know a lot of stuff sometimes. And I think that's just a case of taking an ego check. And hopefully that's what this is, you know, detaching from that expectation of having the answers and understanding things sometimes. It's okay to not know. And I think that's really important. I get very caught up in trying to be in control of too many variables. For me, a lot of the times I talk about business, especially in this podcast, but it reflects my real life, you know. A lot of the times I'm focusing on trying to solve problems inside the business, which for me is fun. It's stimulating, and I like to talk about it because I'm passionate about it. But I'm aware that I'm a 23-year-old talking about things that people have been doing for years and years and years. Now, I'm lucky because I'm in an industry that is relatively new. So it's not like there's people that have been doing social media content for 20, 30 years. It hasn't been around that long. So I would argue that most young people have more expertise in social media than your average 50, 60-year-old marketing exec that's been marketing for years. They might have more marketing experience in traditional forms of media, but not on social media. And social media is where it's at, people. But I'm focused on getting better. I'm focused on being a better person, focused on getting healthier. I'm focused on running a better business, being a better leader in that business. Sounds so egotistical. It gives me the creeps when I say that. I'm not a leader at all, but I manage a team, so I suppose that puts me in the... Anyways, moving on. All of these things, for me, get overwhelming because I'm like, God damn, I've got to go to the gym, or I've got to go for a run, and I'm not eating clean, and I need to get my 8 hours or 7 hours of sleep in, and I need to get this done for a client. But like, if I was to boil it all down and just simplify it, it's just getting better. It's just doing a better job consistently over a long span of time. I've said it multiple times on this podcast. I am here for the long run. And if you're trying something and you're putting yourself out there in anything, if it's music, if it's art, if it's college, if it's a new job, like, don't rush it. Just be patient. And a lot of this is for myself too. I'm speaking very, very much so to myself here. Like, you've got time. Of course, nothing is guaranteed, you know? You can't say you have X amount of years left, but you do have time, you know? And I think across the globe, we'd benefit if some of us were to just chill out a little bit, you know? I think everything moves so fast right now, and we're in this crazy, crazy time where social media is connecting us to these people that we may never have met or even heard of before. Like this morning, I was listening to an interview with Alex Hormozi and the owner of Shopify, and the top comment was, "It's insane that we get to listen to billionaires' thoughts and put them into our heads for free." Years ago, you wouldn't have been able to get into a room with these people. You might have heard like a news article that they'd written or being interviewed, or maybe you could buy a biography, but that's still not coming directly from them. It's edited, it's refined, and it's designed to meet the public. We live in a world where we have access to the highest performers in the world, because if they are a high performer, they understand that social media is such an asset and they'll put a lot of time into it. Alex Hormozi is somebody I reference so frequently because I consume so much of his content, because again, for me, I want to be a successful businessman. I want to be able to build a business that is successful, and I want to be able to generate a lot of money doing so. If I was to look at somebody who has done that and who has modeled his entire content around his life and his learnings doing so, it's Alex Hormozy. It doesn't mean that everything he says I take for gospel, but the fact that I can go onto YouTube and listen to hours and hours and hours of unedited content from him speaking about his experience is it's crazy. I don't think we understand how crazy it is, because I'm saying we, because I imagine anyone who's watching this is probably of a similar age of me, I don't know if that's proper grammar. Anyways, moving on. We can't conceptualize life without social media or the internet. And now even AI, I'm not even going to go down the AI rabbit hole. But we live in a pretty crazy time, and we have so much access to information. And it comes back to what I said at the start, that I'm a clueless 23-year-old focused on one thing. And the reason that I'm trying to focus on one thing is because if I didn't, I'd focus on a million things that everybody's saying and everything's happening. And there's so much information being shot at us every single day that if you don't have a strong enough filter to sift through what is necessary for me right now and what is not. And 9 out of 10 things that you consume are probably unnecessary. And I'm speaking again to myself here. Sometimes I can watch YouTube and I come away from it feeling a little bit inspired or motivated, or maybe I'm thinking about something a little bit differently. But 9 times out of 10, I come away from it being like, why have I just watched this person? I found this dude on TikTok, and I'm going to talk about him for a minute. His name is something 140. He has a solar death ray, and he's built this contraption, and he just burns stuff. I watch a lot of his videos, and I don't know why. Sometimes I'm on shorts, and he's like, let's see what the solar death ray can destroy today. And I'm like, yep. Want to see what happens here. He pulled out a metal pan in his last video, and he's like, yep, it's burning the middle, but I'm going to try and move it up to the left side to see if I can smolder the entire pot. And I'm like, yeah, do it, because I want to see what happens. Now, that's not something I need to know. That's never going to benefit me. And he also finishes every video, which I love, by saying, that's rad. That's pretty cool. That's a prime example of me consuming things that I don't need to consume. It's great for entertainment, and entertainment is important. But man, sitting down, watching some dude with a solar death ray is not something I should be doing. It's great because we have access to all of this shit, but it's so important to have a filter and just say no to some things. Because for me, I get overwhelmed, and then I come out of it feeling bad. And I think I'm obviously a sensitive person. I'm seeing this content and it's making me feel a type of way. So then, not that the solar death ray is making me feel a type of way, but I'm trying to explain what I'm trying to say here. And again, I'm a clueless 23-year-old, so maybe I just don't know, and that's okay. But my point overall was that there's so much information coming at you. You have to have a strong filter to determine, is this beneficial or is this not? And there is a room and there is an exemption for entertainment, but entertainment is not 6 hours of your day. That's a problem. If you're spending 6 hours of your day, even less, if you're spending 4 hours of your day entertaining yourself, you need to design a more entertaining life, because that's not good. At least that's what I think as a 23-year-old. If I'm spending 6 hours of my day not focused on my day and not focused on my real life, that's not good. That means that I'm spending 6 hours trying to not think about my life. I want to have a life that I don't want to not miss, that I don't want to have to distract myself from. That sounds like I'm trying to avoid some serious, deeper issues. Everyone does it. So I'm also painting this picture in extremes. Again, you might sit on TikTok for 6 hours one day, and then you might have a day where you don't even look at it at all. And that's fine. That's the exemption. It's if you're doing it consistently. Oops, sorry, people. It's if you're doing it consistently every single day. That's where I think it can become a problem. And for me, it definitely can. It just affects me in so many other ways. I feel like I've less energy. I'm less motivated. My thoughts aren't as clear. I start to catastrophize things because I'm looking at this app. And as well as the solar death ray, there's also people that are doing crazy things they're touring Europe in huge, expensive sports cars, or they're going to casinos and betting millions, and you're seeing these people losing money, getting money, talking about money, living these extreme lifestyles, and it makes you think fuck, I wouldn't mind a slice of that pie. And that's obviously always been around. But I think it's to an extreme now with social media because we're getting an inside scoop into these people's lives. And that's another reason why I really appreciate Alex Hormozi's content, because he's not fixated on any of that. It's all about business for him. He's the extreme side of just bullish on business. Like, he's closing out, apparently acquisition.com will be worth $1 billion within 36 months. So he has a lot of money already. But he's just focused on making $1 billion. That's his current goal. Don't know what it'll be after, probably $100 billion. Is that even a word, or is that a trillion? I don't know. I don't plan on making $100 billion in my lifetime. Just to put it out there. He's entirely focused on just making great business content. His whole reasoning behind starting social media was, again, it was a singular focus, which is why I'm trying to focus on one thing personally. His singular focus with starting his YouTube channel was, I want to create content that will attract people to my business so I can convert them into dollar signs. That was the principle behind his business. Acquisition.com is his primary company that he runs right now. And from my 23-year-old understanding, I don't know if he acquires companies. It sounds like he does by the title. They invest in companies. So they have a portfolio of companies. They back them with money and they make returns on the profit as that company does well. They're basically a VC, from my understanding. Might be using that in the wrong phrase. Sorry if I am, people that know. I clearly don't. But he's focused on one thing, and that's reflected across every single YouTube video, every piece of Instagram content that he puts out. It's all about the one thing, which is just showing people how to run a better business, because he wants you to do that. Because if you run a really good business, then he can invest and he can make money on you. Like, he is benefiting from this, but he's very upfront about it, so it doesn't feel like a scam. It's clever. And again, he's obviously a very clever and driven person. So if you are looking for somebody that you don't want to feel like you're getting scammed by, or that they're making you just feel shit, Alex Hormozi's a good bet for you, people. Focusing on one thing, trying to be better, while also being aware of how little I know, has led me to this weird sense of fear around consistency. Consistency, I think, is one of the most important aspects of life in general. You know, again, I always bring it back to the gym analogy, because the gym, or health, fitness, running, whatever it is, because I think that's like the foundation of being a healthy, good person, is exercising. You can't just exercise for 4 days out of a week and then not train for a month. It doesn't work like that. You have to be consistent with it. Like, anybody that has a relatively good physique or good level of fitness exercises a couple of times a week. And there's no way around that. Zero. There's no way to replicate it. There's no supplements that you can take to enhance. Well, you can jump on juice, but it's still not going to make you like cardiovascularly fit, if that's a word. But that fear of consistency, and I think maybe that's just a form of catastrophication, and I think it might be because I'm young too, so I haven't been around for enough cycles of my life to be like, oh, well, through that whole period I was doing X or I was doing Y. I still feel like I'm picking up new hobbies or new interests, and it's hard to understand, like, you know, to look back when you're 45 and be like, yeah, I've been exercising for 15 years. Well, then it's like, I've been doing that for a long time, you know? That's consistency. And I think consistency over a long period of time is quite different to consistency over a short period of time. Because if you are saying you're consistent in the gym for the last 2 weeks, you'd want to be there at least 5 or 6 times a week. Whereas if you're saying you're consistent over 15 years, no one's going to be aware of how consistent you are. You might have just gone 1 day a week for 15 years. It still seems like a lot more. It is obviously a lot more reps. What am I saying? No. That lack of consistency spooks me out, especially when it comes to work, because sometimes I wake up and I don't feel like the sharpest tool in the press or in the toolbox, or the sharpest knife in the press. Anyways, moving on. Again, god damn, man. It's not super late. It's about 5:45 now, probably. No, it's not. It's about 6:45. Sorry. And I said I'm going to sit down and record the episode. I've done a good day. My brain's a little bit tired, but I felt motivated and I felt fired up and ready to rock. And here we are, and I'm stumbling over my words like I've been sipping on a whiskey. That lack of consistency spooks me out. because I don't want to wake up one day and just not be able to do as good of a job as I did the day before. And again, over a long period of time, that's fine. But sometimes you have to be performing at a high level. And I feel like I've put myself into a position where I have to be performing at least 80, 90% every single day. And if I don't, things very quickly begin to spiral out of control. You know, it could be as simple as like an email doesn't get replied to quick enough. And then that leads to a problem because the content didn't get sent, and then the download takes time, and it starts all these little backlogs. And that backlog leads to more stress, and that bigger amount of stress then causes the consistency to take a bigger hit because you feel worse, and it's harder to get yourself back up. So I think, to answer my own question, rather than being fearful of being capable to stay consistent, it's a case of just setting consistently smart goals. Having small amounts of consistent work that you can do daily without doubt, that you can stand on your business and say, okay, it's a Monday, I'm feeling a bit rough, but I've got these 3 things to do today. And if I do those 3 things, they're going to move the needle forward. And that's kind of what I'm trying to do. I came back from holidays 2 weeks ago, and I keep saying this like it's so cool. But the reason I keep referencing it is because when I was on holidays, I spent a lot of time thinking about how I'm living and what I'm doing when I'm home and when I'm working, and how could I be doing it better, and how could I be enjoying myself a little bit more. And I came back to this kind of, concept of working within rules, concrete constraints create. Another version of that is you can't score if there's no goalposts on the pitch. That kind of thinking, I was trying to structure my days to the hour, to the minute sometimes. And I've heard people doing this where they'll literally track every minute of their day to see how often they're distracted, how often they're actually working. And for me, that sounds like the worst thing that I could possibly do. I feel like I would get no work done because I'd spend all day tracking every minute that I spent. Moving on again. I was tracking it like 15-minute blocks, 30-minute blocks. If I had a call, I'd book that in. If I had if I needed to draft up an edit, I'd put that time in rather than just saying like, I have a meeting here, a shoot here. I was like using my calendar as my journal, and then I was sequentially using my journal as well. To do that, it felt like I was at least operating within some set of rules. And I think that's a really beneficial tip. If you're looking to start something, if you're looking to get your first business off the ground and you're looking to make a couple of €100, what I would suggest you do is you look at your week and you schedule in the time ahead of time. Like, don't be like, I'm going to work on it 3 hours this week. Like, put the 3 hours in and break down the 3 hours. Like, what are you going to do in that 3 hour block? Are you going to message people? Are you going to work on your product, on your service? Or are you going to focus on delivering something for a client you already have? Like, list it exactly in your calendar or in your journal so that you don't even have to think about what you have to do. Because that little bit of thinking, for me personally, is enough to deter me from doing the work sometimes. Sometimes I sit down and I don't have a clear list as to what I should be doing chronologically, and that allows my mind to wander, and then I start thinking of other things, and then before I know it, I'm doing a task that isn't important or urgent, but it's easier than the task that I should be doing. But because that task hasn't been put in my calendar at the time, I don't fucking do it. Schedule your shit. Small, measurable goals consistently will avoid the fear of failing on a long time horizon. Think less and detach from the outcomes. You might see me if you're watching the video podcast. Those are my notes. Absolutely catastrophic. Think less and detach from the outcome. Comes back to what we just spoke about there a second ago. Think less about what you're doing and just detach from what it's going to do. Sometimes is when I do the best work. That's what I'm trying to say. Sometimes when I think less about what I'm doing and I just do it, I just dive into it. Maybe I'm not super prepared or I'm not in the best mind state. I just say, fuck it, I have to do this now, and I do it. I talked about it on last week's episode where I had a load of busy, big jobs coming up within a week, and it was a time crunch to get everything done. But because I had no time to think, I got everything done and everything looked great. Parkinson's law, work will expand to the timeline allotted. So just condense the timelines and think less. Don't try to be the smartest person. And I'm fucking guilty of this. Not that I'm trying to be the smartest person, but sometimes I think that I need to think. I need to think less is actually what I need to do. I spend so much time thinking that I need to think about something before I do it. How many times can you say think without saying think? God, sorry, brothers and ladies, this is something for you. But OTR episode 11 with your host, which is me, Dylan Tarmey. Boom. Detach from the outcome. Stay away from it. Don't get bogged down in the idea that this has to be a perfect piece of work. Shrink the timelines and just get the work done, because you can't improve on nothing. That's the first principle. You cannot improve on nothing. You have to make something before you can make something better. That is one of the best things I've ever thought of, speaking about thinking less. And maybe someone's quoted it before, but I feel like I've never seen it anywhere, and it came to me, and it just makes perfect sense to me that you cannot improve on nothing. We spend so much time, I do personally, thinking about how can I make this video better, or how can I make that idea stronger, or how can I make this easier to execute. And the reality is there's zero point in wasting time doing that until you have something somewhere, whether that's a rough sketch on paper, whether that's a framework for your website or a wireframe for your website, whether it's an outline of the edit, if it's the instrumental to the song that you're trying to write. You have to start with something, then you can make it better. But until you press start, you have no permission, zero permission to spend time trying to improve that thing. It doesn't make sense. It's a waste of time. Stop being a fucking idiot. Love you. If it's not simple, it's broken. If you can't explain it to somebody that doesn't have knowledge of what you're doing, if I can't explain our video editing process to somebody that's in sales, then the process is fucked. It's broken. I'm not talking about explaining the technicalities of making things. I'm speaking about the overarching principles and framework for how something gets done. How does the video go from being shot on an iPhone or shot on a camera to being uploaded on said person's feed? If that cannot be explained to somebody with zero industry knowledge, then the whole process is broken and you need to rebuild it from the bottom up. This is something, again, that I'm doing right now, as we speak. Not right now, but only about 40, 50 minutes ago. It has to be so simple that it's impossible to fuck up, because people make mistakes. We're all human, and that's important, because if we weren't human, we'd be dealing with GPTs all over the place. And GPT is great, but we don't want to make videos yet. It has to be so simple that it could be written down somewhere, and once it's seen, it's understood. And it's the same. It's like the Bible. It doesn't change. And if you're stuck, you can refer to it, and it should be simple to solve. It shouldn't be like, use this software to connect to this, to connect to that, to send this to this person, to ask for approval from here, to get this back over here and refer back to the board. Like, it should just be A to B to C to D to E. The workflow has to be simple. I'm not going to go and explaining how to design a workflow right now, because I'm also a 23-year-old that's clueless. I don't have the answers for you, brother. But you can find them on YouTube pretty easily. Everything should be simple. Like I'm with this podcast again, I want to make this for a very long time. I actually love sitting down here talking. Makes me feel good about myself, and I really enjoy making the episodes. And I'm also just doing it to try and get better at it, because again, I'm clueless, dog. I don't know what I'm doing, and I'm trying to figure it out. So throw me a bone here, buddy. It doesn't feel the same when I say stuff like that. Anyways, and there's no one in the room to finish my point, because it felt weird when I didn't finish my point, thinking too much. For me to get the podcast to a place where I'm happy with it and it's consistent and it's being distributed correctly, I have to simplify the whole process, and I have to schedule the whole process, and I have to create it like a Bible again. So I know that every Tuesday at 7:30 p.m. I sit down here, the lights are set up, the tripod's in the same position, it's continually the same, and I just press record, I grade the video, I send it, it gets chopped, we upload it, and clips get distributed. That's where it needs to be, and it's not there yet. We're working on getting the clips workflow in place, and we're looking at getting it distributed onto audio only platforms, because I still haven't done that on the 11th episode, which is ludicrous because it is a podcast, and I'm aware that I'm missing out on so many potential viewers by not doing that. But part of me is like, it's okay, because I'm still not great at this whole thing, you know? When we get to episode 80 or fucking 30 maybe, we'll be a little bit better. We'll be getting some guests on, and then I'll be more confident to put it everywhere, you know? I'm still working in the shadows with this thing, but I'm trying to be rigid with myself that I have to post it, and that's how I'm going to get better, because once it's live, I care about it a little bit more and it carries more weight. I actually saw a fellow Irish videographer, David McGowan, I believe his name is. I hope I didn't fuck that up. His company is... That's so fucking embarrassing. Why did I say that? It'll come back to me. Anyways, he made a video on Instagram and he talked about, you know, how he talks with his clients, and he says to hold before you post sometimes and just think about it a little bit more, because it makes you think, is this perfect? Rather than just scheduling it and automating it, because then it goes out, you don't think about it, and you're kind of like, phew, that's done. Whereas if you have to post it, you have to open it up. Way Out West. Way Out West is the name of his company. You have to open it up and you have to look at the video one more time. You have to consider, is this perfect? Is the caption right? Is everything in here good? And am I happy with it? And then press post. And it made a lot of sense. And that's kind of how I feel with the podcast. That's why I'm posting it. And that's why I'm not scheduling it. I'm posting it at X time and I'm clicking publish. And then I'm sharing it to my stories if I do so. Because that makes me feel like it's got more stake to it and a little bit more weight to it. And again, all of these things are under the overarching concept of just trying to be a little bit better. 1% every day. I think every fitness brand in the world has coined that phrase right now, but it is true. It's like you're just looking to be a tiny bit better each day. And I'm young, so I have a head start. And that's why I'm doing this now, because I want to give myself a head start. I don't want to be learning all this shit at 30 or 35. I want to be learning it now so I can get as many mistakes and as many fuck-ups out of the way, so that it's ideally a little bit more informed thinking and informed behavior by the time I hit my 30s. Which is crazy to be thinking about that, because I remember when I was 16 and I was like, I'm never going to be 18. I'm never going to be allowed to buy booze, is what I was thinking. And I'm 23 and I don't buy booze. Sometimes I do. Sometimes I have a couple brewskis with the boys. Not very frequently, though. But it is good when you do it. And again, like social media, like the solar death ray, you don't want to be doing it all the time, but a couple every once in a while is great. It's good for you. It's healthy. It's good to be around people, you know? That's something as well that I'm trying to include in my life more. I'm just telling you all about my life. So come on in, grab a seat, grab a little brewski if you want, and come hang out with me. But maybe don't, because I think this will be coming out in the afternoon, so hold off on the brewski, brother or sister. I'm trying to hang out with people more. It's an introverted person. It's fine. But yeah, for real, because I think that's something that's very important as well. And that's something that makes me feel like a better person and makes me a better person, I believe. And maybe that's not the correct way of thinking about it, but I always feel better when I hang out with people. And especially friends, like not just people. Like I don't go and hang out with people on the street that I don't know. But when I hang out with friends, I feel better. It's like you just feel good. Your soul, energy, everything for me just feels better. But sometimes I find it really hard to make that time. And it's not even that I don't have the time, but I feel like I don't deserve it sometimes. I'm like, no, I haven't put in enough work to be hanging out and playing around. Like I need to get my head down and finish what I started here. Like I'm going to get the ring in Lord of the Rings. But yeah, man. Maybe that's all that I've got for you today, and I think it is. I'm not going to keep you here for much longer. This was episode number 11 of Off the Rip with your host, which is me, Dylan Tarmey. I hope you enjoyed, and again, I hope there's something inside these episodes that you find beneficial. I know for me personally, I really enjoy making them. I ain't stopping making them, but I am conscious that I ramble quite a bit, and I talk about stuff that mightn't be directly related to the topic or even the title and thumbnail. And I hope you never find them misleading. That's not my intention, but I struggle because I sit down to create a title and a thumbnail to describe a video of this clueless 23-year-old talking about a whole load of stuff. It's quite difficult sometimes. So again, I really appreciate you clicking on and watching. It means a lot, truthfully, to see even like 10 people, one person watching the podcast is pretty awesome. You know, I'm a little fellow in Wicklow in Ireland. So if you did watch it and you did enjoy it, hit a like, hit a subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next one. Not going to do that, but I will see you in the next one. Peace out, people. Thank you. Have a great week.